Hello. Right, you had a good weekend. Just a reminder, today is the last lecture on Monday. Okay, next Monday we won't have a lecture. Next Monday and Tuesday is our last two tutorial day. Okay, so run the same way the tutorial has been run since last week, which is start from 11, finish at 5. Okay. So today will be last lecture in this theater. So starting tomorrow, we're going back to that room, the physics room, 315. So hopefully your assignments are coming along. I think I'll try to do my best to finish my marking before tomorrow lecture. So still have some way to go. And hopefully you have a way to assignment 2. Okay, so I think there are quite a number of people, groups of people getting the device out on Thursday. I think there's one more on the mobile device on Friday. Okay, so hopefully it has some way. So tomorrow, for the next 2 days, which is your assignment 2 is due on Wednesday night. Okay, so tomorrow we have tutorial and on Wednesday. So that one will be not a fully engaged tutorial. So basically we try to get you to spend at least half of the time working on your assignment inside that tube. Okay. So however, we still want to show you the new device that you potentially could use in your assignment 3. Okay, so that would mean there will be a short description of Milo, but it more or less, instead of have you do it, we will basically steal 1 or 2 machines from the lab and use that to set up as a demonstration. So we talk a little bit and then invite you along the semester, along the tutorial to come and take a look and then experience the new device. But you don't necessarily have to go through the step, okay? Because the thing is going to be quite distracting playing with new device full time, because when especially your assignments is due and you need more time on the actual lab itself. Okay, so tomorrow, the next 2 days will be more or less on those kind of hands-on experience, but you can choose to pursue that in assignment 3. Okay. So tomorrow we'll plan to roll out our HoloLens. So if you haven't seen the HoloLens, tomorrow we'll see them. It's AR C2 glasses, and then also Oculus Go. Okay, which is the baby sister of Oculus Rift, except that it's actually standalone. Okay, there's no cable. You load the software in there, and then they can run. However, limitation is that you cannot transport, you cannot walk around. You simply it's a rotation sensor only. So you can rotate around. Okay, like Google Cardboard, it's just a nicer form factor. Okay, and more powerful as well. All right, so. With that, so today I think it's a figure that I'll probably talk a little bit more technical, okay, on the technical side of this unit, which is more or less on a tracking component. Okay, I think some of these I put in a reading list as well. Okay, that's one of our breakthrough paper we all talk about, which is in our communities, which is to show you 10 years on, we see a lot of effect on that. So now we start to see that all of these is actually require one common thing, which is a tracking device, which I said it last week before. Basically, for you to be able to capture the movements, okay, or the head tracking. Okay, people work in eye tracking, but that's a different things. Okay, that's a much more complicated. Okay, and the head tracking, what you actually experience now, a handheld, that could be the viewpoint tracking. Also, the headset itself, the Rift. Okay, that you see, that's the tracking. Okay. So it's basically, this is just go to a symbol, old symbol that we used from last week, which essentially all of these require some sort of tracking sensor device. Okay. So sensors generally there's 2 components. Okay, so it's 3 components: sensors and the actual sensor itself. Okay, and the actual processing of those sensors and make sense of what the sensings mean. Okay, multiple sensor type, and then you actually have a display component. So this is essentially, in a nutshell, this is make out the AR. So you track how you move, just like your cell phone, the Euphoria you play. You track how you move, and then basically you're projecting, processing how these calculations, what the positions look like. Okay. and then you display accordingly what the AR contents look like. VR and AR will be exactly the same principle. Okay, so that's when you move inside Oculus Rift. Okay, that's your head is being tracked, so therefore your model is actually being reprojected every single frame. Okay. So this is just to give you a sense of why you need to track, especially in AR. Okay, so in AR, this is actually the issue called registration. This is what makes AR is technically more challenged. Okay, VR it used to be a lot of problem with the tracking. Okay, but that problem seems to be kind of go away now. So it start to be more mature. It's kind of more simple. And then the registration for AR is actually the bottlenecks at the moment. Okay, so it's always a problem. For example, if you have AR headset or AR mobile device, Vuforia, you're looking here, and for you to be able to register a digital contents inside the real world, let's just imagine that this is a real world contents. Okay, what the scene of a building. Okay, so you want to have a kind of object that kind of look real to you. Okay, so in that case, what you actually have here is, let's say that red car we all assume is virtual contents. Okay, but have it make it right in the VR. If this whole thing become virtual contents, this is very much easy to do because everything is digital contents. But in this case, everything that you see here, as we assume is the real world, is actually anything but the red car is actually not real. It's all real, except the red car is not real. So what do you think is the main particular issues? By combining this, you just simply overlay it, right? There's no magic in that. Right? We talk about the need for tracking. Let's say this camera view is moving around. Position of that car, let's say assume the red car is not moving, then it has to stay there. It has to stay where it appears to be in a fixed location. As your camera moves, that car actually, that display on the screen will change, right? Because accordingly to how you move, if you move to the left, the car that's slightly on the screen will move to the left, or the opposite direction. Okay. And another issue here, can you point another difficulty? Shadow, yep. Shadow is one of those, so that is actually basically has to do with light. Okay, so if you have a shadow here, let's say the red car is actually on the other side of the building where the shadow is, then you don't want the red car to suddenly be very shyly bright and those things. But those are actually getting better now with a lot of what the current, not this scale. ARCore has built in what they call light estimation from the scene. So that is helping. Your character now will have certain shades that reflect the current color of the light environments of the real world. Okay, how about another one? This is what most difficult, I would say. Currently, there's not much unless you use different type of sensor camera. That is an occlusion. Okay, now you can see part of the red car is missing. Yeah? But if you just superimpose on top of it, not just location correct, orientation correct of that car to appear to be on the road, it's actually part of the car has to be occluded by the actual building. Okay. So that is actually, if you don't have a sensor that detecting that is actually a foreground, that is almost no point. Mm-hmm. Right now, I think iPhone X or XX can now do some of that. Mm-hmm. You can detect a little bit of foreground. Mm-hmm. But for the long range, right, this is extremely difficult. I would say that you probably need some kind of stereoscopic camera. But it's actually, with this range, sometimes you can have some uncertainty. So sometimes you might not be able to extract very well. So in this case, what you actually have to do is actually have to create a, full solution will be have to create a reconstructed component of this building. Okay, you know exactly where the surface is, where. So that means you might be walking around scanning the environments. That's similar to ARCore that you do, but you don't do on the table. Okay, so in this case it will be that. So this is what I think this kind of range is actually for. At this point, it's a military attacking this kind of problem. For the commercial use, mostly ARCore are dealing with the desk type, desk size, one workspace, which is not that big. This is a long range. Okay, this is a few hundred meters away. So, but why would actually we need to get registration? So this is what would look like. What it look like is you will have a little gun, a little object here, okay, that actually has this virtual windshield sitting on top of it. Okay, you might see better in the slide. So this is a physical object. Okay, it looks like a stick. But then what you actually want to do is have the virtual contents look like a virtual windshield. It's kind of always stick, and when you move that stick around, this whiteboard, this dashboard is moving around with it. And that's what it looked like in the middle caption here, an image on the right. If you move to the wrong directions and you have problem with your tracking or you have latency in your system, neither of these, a combination of these, what's going to happen is that this is what you call misregistration. So this is why the virtual content, where it's supposed to be sitting here, is actually sitting here. So what it appear in the live video stream, this thing is keep lagging behind, keep chopping around. Okay. There are different type of nature problem that you come up with tracking, independent of what you use. Okay. That's why the rest of this is today lecture is about centered around different techniques, different technology in tracking. So hopefully this is get you idea, because right now I think what you're actually experiencing, you practically have very low registration errors. Okay. So you look at Vuforia, so you look at the Mars marker, so practically things are sitting there. But if things are not working right, then you might not see them at all, or your cube that you put it on the marker, but start to drifting around. Okay, start to moving around randomly. Okay, and that is actually not good for to create a sense of augmented reality. So a little bit of a pop quiz. Okay. So you think it's good registration or will require accurate tracking? So now you get some idea what registration is. Right? Registration is a whole process, okay, that actually tracking is part of it. Tracking accuracy is part of it, okay. So this is obviously true, okay. The one that actually obviously not true is that if you have a tracking system that's very accurate, you not necessarily get a registration to be accurate too. It's not the other way around, okay. Because remember, registration is a process involving tracking, with display registration, calibration process, the whole bunch. So basically, it's just the reverse is not true. Okay. So hopefully this makes sense. Okay. Now, so in the tracking here, even though I said AR, but in fact, a lot of this is driven VR initial stage. But right now, VR is converted or to either image processing based tracking or optical tracking. Okay. But in the old days, there are quite a number of them. Okay. So before we go to that, we take a look at the coordinate system. Okay. So this is when you look inside the Unity, either anything of tracking divider you use or any divider you use, you will see this value there at the very top of your inspector, the X, Y, Z, and then has 6 number. So that's the 6 degree of freedom. Okay, that's generally what we describe as fully describe the position and orientation of rigid body. Okay, rigid body means object that doesn't move shape. It's not deformed. It's not a muscle or organ that kind of deform and heartbeat to keep moving. This is a rigid body like block, build, objects, things like that, which is actually your headset and your mobile phone in case that you're tracking there. Okay. So that 6 degree of freedom is divided into 3. Okay, 3 is orientation. Okay, so the easy one is translation. So that's what you would know as X, Y, Z. Okay, moving X, moving Y, moving Z. Okay, orientation is basically orientation around those axes, pitch, roll, and yaw. Okay, that's generally around X, Y, and Z. Okay, so that's is that you can see that X moving this direction, so rotation around this direction. And it's Y this way, and then you're moving around this axis. And if it actually the C is this in height, then the axis moving around is like that. So you will see the 6 number floating around while you're actually running the device. Okay, it should much be easy to look at them. Okay. So now, I think this one I showed last week. Okay, so this one is a very first, very clunky mechanical device, because at that time there's no such other device actually available. Okay, so this one is probably what you can do. So this one is really like a mechanical arms of the robot. Okay, so this one you can track them very accurately. And you can see mechanical shaft, so that's extended out. So if you, in case that he bend his knee, he go down, so that mechanical arm will stretch, extend, extract. Okay, and yes, so that's just quite a powerful one. Okay, so there's another thing, mechanical. Before I go here, mechanical here, the advantage is very clear. It's very hard to build, okay, and then very hard to maintain. And another thing you might think of, what's the disadvantage of mechanical? Expensive, but that's more expensive than mechanical. But there's those among the expensive ones. It's a range of operations. So in this case here, how many mechanical arms you think you can stretch? So basically, you probably not that far you can walk. Okay, when in fact the Oculus Rift, if you have the space, you can track to up to 3 by 5 meters, so relatively large. Mechanical arm probably within a few half a meters at most. Okay, so because that's quite heavy, they're quite heavy. So the optical one is the interesting one. Okay, so this is optical tracking. Okay, mostly using infrared light. Okay, so this is one of the model we had at the HIT lab up in Newnham. So the principle is similar. I'll show the Oculus just short after this slide. Okay, so this one is basically anyone has any background in tracking optical, infrared, triangulation? There's nothing. Okay, so basically what it does is that it has a sensor, the two of them on the left and on the right. It looks like it has a lot of red dot around them. Okay, that's an infrared light, just like a CCTV camera, security cameras, it paint out the infrared. And the one in the middle is in the middle of, that one is an infrared camera. Okay, so the infrared around it, you put the infrared into a space, and in the middle, it's actually capture what's coming back. Okay, now just get to this part first. So you have couple of this sensor, okay, camera, and then you have this box which is just representing of computing. Okay, so you will get that information, whatever you detect from this camera, and you send it back, and this is where it calculated from multiple locations. Remember that this one will sit on one corner synchrony, just like your Oculus Rift. You try to put it on the two sides. Okay. But in the actual full system, you might have this on opposite end. That's just looking into the space. As Oculus is make it easy, so you always stand in front of it. But in fact, if this thing is lift up, you're actually walking underneath it. So this thing will be kind of constellation around it. Now, the one that actually do the tracking is actually the camera itself do the tracking, capture infrared reflection back from the environment. So that's when the object here need to have some kind of reflector, okay, to track. So basically the camera will see as a dot, because it's an infrared camera, so you won't see visible light, so it will just filter them out. So only see infrared that coming back. So at this object you might not be able to see. So this one has a little stick out, but at the very top has a reflector material, ball, okay, attached to it, just like reflection. So you flash a light and then you see some pink balls. So in this case you will see multiple pink balls come back. Now, the real question here is that, yeah, you see multiple balls. In this case, there are 5 of them, the ball here, configured in certain location, right? But from different camera, you will see different reflection, right? You see different reflections. Basically, all these 5 dots appear differently, okay, on the 2 camera. But in fact, the system like this usually have 4 camera, okay, depending on how your spaces look like, okay? So now what is actually used to calculate though? It's the same ball. You have 5 reflected balls. So essentially you know at camera 1, this is 5, but you don't know which one is 5, which one is the top, which one is the size, which one is the number 4, number 3, right? Because all you have is reflection location, which is a little black spot on your camera, or on your frame. But then how would you actually solve it though? Because the idea was to find where is that object, which is hold this 5 ball extended, tell the location of this hand object and orientation. How about we go back very ancient days when you're looking for star. Okay, so have you heard of triangulation, constellation? You look for North Star when you go out, night, things like that. How would you people recognize that? Okay, so this is a similar thing. It's a constellation. So some mathematically is a triangulation component, in which is that if one location you don't know where it is, what you want is to find where that location inside the real world. But all you know is a 2D reflection, which is on your 2D camera frame of your infrared frame. But all you do is X, Y on one camera one, and then you have camera two, you have another set of X, Y. Okay, and then on maybe camera number 3, you have another set of X, Y, where those spot is. And since you don't know the sequence at all, because when it reflect back, it doesn't tell you this one means ball number 1, ball number 2, number 3. You just see a lump of 5 of them, 5 spots in the screen. And that's what optimization and tracking is coming in. That's the pure mathematics. So that's in this case is one thing that I can give you a clue though is that that location, that shape of that object has to be known beforehand. So those extend arm, okay. So we'll use this. The extend arm here is not random shape. There's no precisely where it's located. So in that case, it will try to fit what they already know. Okay, I'm looking for marker number 1, the whole set, let's say. Marker number 1, so the equation, the computational head here. What are you going to look? You're going to try to map that shape into this. Okay, remember there's a scale factor as well. Okay, this is how far are they? If they're far, very far, the reflection point will get very closer together. Okay, and also they have to solve in this equation here is a rotation. Okay, orientation of that. How is it oriented? But what is known for sure is what the shape of that object look like. How's the arm extend? What angle is come out from that body? What relative? So they know everything on that. But even that still require a lot of computation to do. Usually require dedicated piece CPU to do this. Okay, so we have to run. So this is very simple, okay, but this system is quite expensive when it first came out. This one, I think, it cost $50,000. Just install 4 camera inside our case, and then it can run, I think it's 5 by 5 meters, relatively okay. So, you can have more than one marker, multiple markers, so people can hold one, player can hold one, or the other one could be, you can tie that to the back of your, the helmet, or you can see the head tracking in that case, or you can tie that to an object, a handheld object, you're creating a tracking device, like some kind of magic wand that you can waving around. Okay, so hopefully that's to give you some idea. But then now, that's what Oculus is breaking through about 5 years ago. They start to come with this. But where is Oculus? What you see here, you don't see a lot of AR infrared light. So this is a very early prototype, but it's very much exists. Inside Oculus that you use now. It's actually underneath the layer that your eye cannot see is actually a reflector, infrared reflector. Okay, this is under infrared light, so this is, you can see it. You can see the hand controller as well on the side. Okay, so that's a reflection inside using the IR infrared camera to capture it. Okay, and you can see all dot here. Okay, the same trick. All constellation inside and configuration inside that know precisely how it's oriented in each one of them. Okay, so this one I ping you to. There's one. I think this one would be a good. Oh. Just give me a second.
Let me just turn on the video feed. And here we go. So what you're seeing now is
just a second.
There's a couple of things going on at the same time.
Okay, let me check the mode just a second.
The green blobs, let me just use the mouse.
So this is the Oculus, the old prototype, but you can get the sense of
isolated potential LED positions. The purple numbers that you see are the index of that particular blob, the LED index of that blob reconstructed from the blinking patterns. And then the purple wireframe model, that actually is a 3D model of the DK2's LED distribution, which I just created very easily, which is the position and orientation of that model is reconstructed from the video frames in 3D. So I have its position in X, Y, Z and rotation in yaw, pitch and roll. And then the 3D model is just drawn as a 3D model and projected back onto the LEDs. So this here shows the quality of the pose estimation, the position and orientation of the headset relative to the camera that I'm getting from just using optical operation. There's no sensor fusion yet. The IMU, the inertial measurement unit that's in the Rift headset, is not involved in this yet at all, which has some effects that I'm going to show you in a bit. But to prove that I'm not cheating, I'm not going to use my hand and cover up half the LEDs here. And you see how the headset is still being tracked and the wireframe is still drawn completely, even though I'm covering half the LEDs. And if I take my hand away, then of course they snap right back into place. So now if I turn this over to the side and we only track the LEDs on the right side of the headset, you see how it's a bit jittery, and that is one of the side effects of not backing this up with inertial measurement data. I'm now working.
This is notice this is they call DK2 development kit version 2. This is about at least 3 years ago, but the same concept here. But now they with the current version, the consumer version that you're using. Now this one is much improved, but the basic concept of optical tracking is a sense. But I think you would know that actually when the Oculus, you try to stay in front of facing it. You don't necessarily try to be looking and backward, because essentially you won't see the part of it much. You probably can get the idea. When the headset completely turned, then you actually could lose, and then that's when you lost the tracking, okay? And would be quite a bit disturbing for people inside.
On a somewhat under-constrained system where any kind of pixel noise in the image will result in a lot of noise in the orientation and measurement. That, of course, would be filtered out the moment I start doing sensor fusion, which is the next step. The other
one of the things that you might see is kind of jittering like that. That usually is what you don't see inside Oculus this day, because if you actually happen to be inside that, experience is quite a bit negative, because you essentially we see your world kind of moving around like that, because it's actually thought your head is moving around like that. So that means eventually you get sick, and that's what I think with the DK1, DK2, the version 2, and then this Oculus, it's come a long way. Before that, it has a bit of this component fit into it. So right now is much smoother.
Thing where using the IMU comes in really handy is that right now the system loses tracking.
And you might have seen this one, just that little bit there. Pay attention to 15.4.16 number associated with LED, which is sit just over on the top of the head.
Really handy is that right now the system loses tracking.
Yeah, you see that the 15 disappear just before, so that's basically redundant. So that means in some part, of course, it's not allowed. Basically, you remove your hand blocking it, and your head be moving around like that. So basically, those constellation does not require one time. I think generally triangulation like this require 4 to 6 point to be clear, just like GPS, commercial grade GPS will require how many satellites need to see. Okay.
If I move the headset very quickly, like this, because then it loses the association between the LED blobs in the image. In the video frame, it can't identify them between frames, and then it has to start over from scratch, which fortunately is a very quick process. But if I...
So this is one, you will see when it move, it could blink, it blink. It blink, it says it blink. So that's when actually, if you're inside the environment, you move your head very quickly, your scene will float. Either float or it actually try to, it's usually float, and it will kind of readjust it. and then you will get this kind of sensation in and out of reality quite a bit. But that is actually solved now with the question that you have with inertial device, okay? That kind of mix in, which is covered toward the end of the lecture today. This is just purely from the optical point. And you probably can see here, it's a bunch of points that you see here. The reason it has a number attached to it, that's to show the outcome of successful tracking. Okay, when you computational successfully can detect that, okay, this is a tracking model, this is all the model, you can put the number associated with each of the ball. Okay, so that's its outcome, but it's not given from the sensor, because sensor wouldn't know that. You would just see just a point floating around. So what that means is the point is moving very quickly within a frame, for example, moving very quickly like this. It needs to re-establish what it's looking at. And generally, if it requires clean slate tracking, it would take about at least a second for it to actually recalculate, okay, this is where it is. Okay, this is how it's oriented like that. So the head movement is very important for this early just purely optical tracking.
If I had now IMUs, then my system would know that the headset moved from here to there, so it could associate the LEDs between frames, even if there are large, fast motions like I'm doing here. As I said, that's the next step. So right now I just wanted to look at the raw results from purely optical tracking to see how good they are, and as it turns out, they're actually really quite good. Let me go to a bit higher distance here. I'm now about 6 feet away with the headset from the camera, and you see how it's a little bit hard to see because now the numbers are drawn so big that they kind of obscure the 3D model, but we are still tracking really, really well with surprisingly little noise. And this is, of course, only going to get better once we add in the IMU data. So that's it. We have a first pose estimation result. We have very, very...
The technical term called pose estimation. So that's the 6-degree freedom calculation. So generally people just call in short pose estimation. Okay. So it says that is the technical size of it. Okay. Any questions so far? You can look at the YouTube again if you have time. So essentially here you see a ring of balls. Okay. So that means the boom that you have for the Oculus Rift, inside there, there's a infrared light that coming up that you just can't see. But if you turn in the camera of your webcam, really assuming that you have a filter on it, you should see cream of the dot, red dot inside. Okay. Okay. Now that is one optical which is based on light. Another technology that also based on light, but you probably think is classically is called video tracking. That's the thing we've seen a bunch of this already. Okay, Vuforia is classic one of these as well. Okay, it uses a marker, okay, which is a pattern. This is what we call marker. Some of the old terms you might call fiducials, those kind of things. So, but you can see here multiple of them. So we have AR2Kit here, the Japanese character on the right. Okay. I don't have the mouse. Okay. So, and you have 3D markers. Okay, so you will see some of those. And you have kind of people playing around with different patterns at that time. But most of these do one thing, okay, give you a fixed pattern that you actually know the pattern beforehand. Similar to optical, the actual LED tracking. So that one also required to know the shape beforehand. So the optical tracking here is very accurate, generally. It's very accurate, high update rate, except the video tracking that use camera. The tracking video cameras, at best, you can do is as fast as your camera goes. So that's approximately on your cell phone about 30 frames, on your mobile device, on your computer, with a quality camera, you might get 60, sometimes 100 frames per second. Okay. Why would the frame rate is important? Why the refresh rate is important? What's the difference between a camera that runs at 10 frames per second versus 30 frames or 60 frames per second? Just try to ask yourself backward. How about Skype? If you use Skype, okay, back home overseas, someday you have a network problem, slow, and your frame is getting from normal speed and down to 5 frames per second, and suddenly your your relative or your friends, their faces start to kind of chopping up, and then start to moving in sequence very slowly. Okay. And this is the same thing with this one, with the tracking refresh rate here. It's actually, the slower you get, that means if you are to actually make a movement now, before the time that you actually finish and compute and ready for the next one, it could take 1 second. That means assuming we have 1 frame rate throughput. So 1 second, every 1 second you produce 1 output. And extremely, you won't get the AR or VR system that usable. Okay. Current system, VR headset will run about 90 frames per second. AR core and the webcam that you use, that runs closer to 30 frames per second. So that's within that window. You need to compute ready. So therefore, you capture the movement. Even 30 frames per second on mobile device is good for regular activity that you move. But for a military, there's no far. By far is not going to be enough because they move very quickly. Okay. So that means that you don't want to get lost when you're starting your head, you start to move very quick. So the accurate, so that is also a good point of this optical tracking. So laser, you can find refinement, you can calculate this as long as you can actually keep your refresh rate within an acceptable range. Okay. Now, the key disadvantage for this one is the first one is occlusion. You block them, you can't see them, then that's it, the game's over. Okay. You block them, you cover the tracker, there's no more. There's nothing there. Okay. And then and usually not easily portable, except of course, except the mobile device again, the computer vision part. But for the optical, that actually room size, Oculus, as much as it's portable now, is actually for the whole system, it usually move very awkwardly to move. So you have a range. Let's say you want to track this space, possible, but you have to mount the sensor up high. And probably Oculus is probably not your best choice. Okay. You have another competitor called HTC Vive. That one actually have this kind of range. Okay. Well, probably not the whole room, but probably this front foyer here probably possible. Okay. And it has the ability to extend. Okay. But all of this is actually require calibration. You need to pack them in the box. So Oculus, the reason we picked them, because they're suitable for our form factor for the lab. So you have multiple of them sit inside the lab if possible. And also portability, the box and everything. The other, never one of them has handle. So I mean, it's really awkward to move them around. Okay. And they're much bigger. Okay. So and also require setup, reference point. Oculus, you still have that in the brief inside of the tutorial. You still have to put the table down, make sure the sensor looking in the right direction. Okay. Relatively simple, but it's actually, if you have a big scale, very accurate, you want to have space to be very accurate, Guardian system to be precisely, it takes a bit of time. Okay. If you, just a simple example, you compare to turn the Rift on and turn the Vuforia on. It's much quicker the other way around. Okay. So that's why people are working very hard. Okay. In the computer vision, when people are working AR Toolkit, they were always wondering, because this one compared to this big system here, as this is just breakthrough in the last 5 years. Before that, people are just not getting into this at all. Okay, people would think this is too expensive. They're commercial product, like I said before. Like this one, will pay quite a bit of money for them. There's high company accuracy used in industry and things like that. But it's not really going to take off to a wider audience. Okay, so that means people still believe that this is the way to go, okay? Except that they're getting tired of all this marker that have to attach to everything they do, okay? So that's why they are pushing very hard in this one. And there's a breakthrough came in, it's about 10 years ago, 2007, okay? This is one at one of the top AR technical conference in the world, okay, ISMA, okay? So this one, I add the citation at the bottom, 2007, this is best paper. I add the copy of the paper in Milo, if you want to read that. It's technical paper. Okay, so if you really want to look at technical paper in AR, that's one of the paper you can look at. Okay, but it's not going to be exam. Okay, so you just have a look. Don't worry about get too far. But that's going to be mathematics. It's going to be signal computer vision algorithms. Okay, it's going to be AR component of it. Okay, so all of this is actually come up with the fact that actually it can track the environments without knowing the environment beforehand, without knowing, without a preset marker like Vuforia. It's simply just going to try to track based on not knowing beforehand. Okay. So before I run the video, which is on YouTube here, you can see here all red dot, okay, dot, multiple color dot on the screen. Okay, that is how computer vision is actually inside algorithm here, is to try to find location. It's still the same thing, it's no magic. You still need to find no location we think is the same location. The same with that dot the same with this dot in optical. Okay. One single dot here, you still want to know from one dot here where it's actually seen, location is seen by camera 1, location is seen by camera 2 or camera 3. Okay. To be able to find location, you need a multiple outcome from the same unknown location to solve your equation. Okay, so this is similar thing, but this is actually not multiple camera because it's a single camera. That's what the beauty of this is. A single camera, you look at one time, you only see one feature, they call features, which is one dot. It's called one feature. And this is probably around 500 features in here. Okay, this is feature that actually computer think that's one unique feature, which is usually corner of the object, okay, which is the corner of the keyboard, corner of the character, a bunch of things. But that is actually a single shot. Unlike the optical see-through where you have your multiple camera. In this one you have single camera. However, you do move. So the camera, the next frame, that's 30 frames per second, the next frame, the very next frame is look at it again and see whether it can find a unique, the same unique identifiable point again. A feature, not point, yeah, pointing on the space. And the color here tell you the level of certainty in which you think. Its thing is the same feature. The red one, the highlight with red one, is actually firm. You think it's seen this before in previous frame, and now it's actually be detected in this current frame. As you go up the ladder, this is a pyramid search. If you could look at the paper, you see multiple color will reflect different certainty. I think the weakest thing is the blue. That means this one most likely never seen before. So therefore, I identify this as a new point. Okay, and I'm not. So I mean, you unsuccessfully try to map this point to the previous frame that you see. But remember, all this has no pattern on it. It's just a point. Okay, it's just a point of a corner, which is this is a purely image processing. Okay, generally as a point not point detections, corner detection. Edge detection, that's a generally, but this one is purely based on point. Okay, corner detection, not a point. Okay. So this allows you to have, and the plane, the real square plane that sit on top of that, that's a virtual AR plane to show you that actually the tracking is now on. In this case, you can actually see that plane. If it's aligned with the table, that means it's actually tracking very well. If the plane starts to wobble, that means your whole map is actually wobble allowed. Okay. So in this case, I think this work is done by Oxford. Okay, so let me see. This is start. Okay. Take about a second. Okay. Initialize the maps. If the plane, the grid plane green, that means the thing initial tracking is good. As you can see, as this camera moves to the new unknown space, it's acquire new point. Okay. And the point moving, changing color very quickly because the camera is moving all the time. And the frame rate is basically computing all the time. Okay. And you see here what highlight the dot is really not the features. The one that you actually pay attention to is the green plane, the grid. Okay, because if that thing is moving, that means the tracking is no longer robust. Okay. Now you can show the scale. Okay, this is particularly a bottleneck for this kind of method. Scale means you're actually looking at a small space, but then you retract yourself to very far distance. All the features that based on computer vision are changing significantly in scale. Not the scale of this boy. I'm talking about the scale in which you far from the distance in which you track. Okay. And you can see the camera will try to play. Yeah. Get very zoom. Your feature in front of you changing. There's now very small, tiny keyboard. Okay, a number. Okay. Again, it's not about that character. That just shows the stability of the tracking. Okay. And you can see how it's moved. This one probably we can skip the lens simulation there. But what it does here, this one's a highlighter. So you can see here, this is really not about lens or anything. It's basically just to show you that actually you can draw it. It's just a very funny way of telling you how application can be used. Essentially augmented reality. You can paint something in an environment, it stay in environments, it will be located as it's actually on the real surface. This one is a highlight. It's not the game, it's a highlight. It actually shows the responsiveness of the method. Okay, so okay, initially it's tracking, and now it's put in a little bit Star Wars. So you have a character here, so that's cursor. You move, and then you're shooting your enemy. But pay attention to the speed. This is where you actually showcase the kind of technique that he's using, the method that he introduced in this space paper, that he can run near real time. And in this case, it's as fast as the camera can capture, which is about 30 frames per second, which is rival the state of the art of most of the desktop at that time, but run on mobile device. Okay, run on mobile device and a single camera. You can see his movements move very quickly. So this has become the really showcase what AR can do. Okay, so and eventually this one is what you actually see now in AR Core. Okay, which is that what it kind of come to 10 years, multiple things. This is actually he went on to work for Microsoft, so that. He went on to build the tracking for the HoloLens, okay? But AR Core is actually using similar thing, similar kind of technique approach. Hopefully you get some idea. So with this one, now it seems like this is a winning solution. What do you think is a disadvantage for this one? Yeah, look like a single camera moving, a smart algorithm, that's all you need. Well, in fact, its performance algorithm is significantly improved. This one is the reason it's called PPTAMS. It's actually based on a well-known technology called SLAM, okay, technique which is used mostly in robotics. However, SLAM does have, it's a linear loop. You track, you rebuild the map, and you track again. Those are usually about a frame, if you're 1 frame per second, if you're fast enough. Okay? Now, with 1 frame per second, you can imagine AR would be a total disaster. It won't be usable. Okay? The only way to use it is for you to not move much. Move very slowly, move very it's not that interactable. But this one is actually the one that introduced a technique, parallels, which is actually make the rebuilding a map, SLAM map here, is actually take time. It take a second, sometimes more than a second, but the tracking need to run at real time, closer to capture speed of the camera. So what I mean, this is actually introduced a way to separate them, run in parallel. Okay, and so what that means, the map is actually moving at the speed in which your CPU allow them to build. Okay, as you move into the new, let's say you pan into the area in which you haven't seen before, that's when it's actually collecting more points. Okay, when it's collecting more feature, that's it's actually put into a master map. Okay, and that we calculate all position, whether actually the map need to be adjusted. Okay, and that usually takes times. Okay, but the tracking itself is actually really clever. Okay, it's actually once you see in the map, it tries to locate where it's actually what part of the map it's seeing. So that it happened at the real-time speed, which is around 30 frames per second. So with this, one of the things that the problem with this is still, even though 30 frames per second is still tied to the camera speed, but that is not really the killer bug. The one thing that is having a problem here is that if the surface doesn't have feature, for example, the surface like this, the table, this will be extremely hard to do. You will see some, those are probably better. You can see a kind of corner, sharp edge, is a small thing. This one is extremely difficult. And another thing, just like any computer vision base, reflection is the one that's killing them. Okay? especially if you look into the mirror, because now you will see the object that you think calculation is based on the forward projection, but in fact it's a reflection of the object from that side. And that actually, once that thing is like a virus, it's go inside the map that you're creating. You're creating conflict inside the map, which is eventually either collapse the map itself. When I say map, is a structure of the whole point, okay, the SLAM point. Okay. So that is a common problem that this thing techniques has. But nowadays, this one has been successfully merged with IMU, the inertial unit, which we'll talk about shortly, to actually give them more robustness. Okay. So I think I'll take about 10 minutes break, and then I'll see you at 3 o'clock. Any questions? All right, see you at 3 o'clock. All right, so let's resume. Okay, so hopefully you get ideas of what kind of tracking so far look like. Okay. So now the next stage here is what you probably have it all along. Okay, it's been used in mobile phone, quite a number of applications. Okay, it has first introduced to interactive business in the form of this V remote. You've seen this before 10 years ago. The white object box that you kind of use this is a hand controller. Okay, which play golf, tennis, and everything. Okay, so that is actually based on. Most of them is IMU, inertial measurement unit, okay, which inside there's accelerometers, okay, that you measure how you move. This is quite a powerful set that you can use because it allows you to actually not track everything. So this one is actually more on movement, okay. So this is used to, if you can remember when you were childhood, when you play this kind of game, it's quite handy when there's actually precise location or position tracking is not required. IMU is actually not very good for a problem of detecting precisely where it is, but it can tell how fast it goes, how accelerations it goes. You know that the displacement is location, tell you position 1, position 2. That's what optical tracking is doing really well, very quickly. However, in this space, IMU is actually opposite. If you ask them at this very moment, where are you in this tracking space, X, Y, Z coordinate, it actually gives you a very fuzzy and gives you very inaccurate. However, the better use for IMU is actually detect the movement between points. So that means if you ask them how fast you're going, it doesn't really matter where you're going, but how fast you're going or how accelerated you're going. It can actually tell you very accurately. Because the key point for this one is update rate. IMU usually pushing, for this one is 100 frames per second, 100 hertz is much easier, and then for the commercial product you might get to 1,000. So that will mean very quickly. Okay. So as I say, this is one of the apps that you probably use in nowadays. Are you using flipping the orientation? Okay, you use that on those are use accelerometer. Okay, accelerometer is actually based on the Earth gravity, so it detects which direction it's coming. So I mean, you turn on, it will detect which of the accelerometer. It usually goes 3 axes. So this one was sensitive here, sensitive here. So if you rotate the phone this way, it would actually detect this side. Since this one is fixed hardware built inside the phone, so it tells precisely which side of the phone you are looking at. Okay, so that's become nowadays is a common. Okay. Now the big problem with inertial here, and less than a big problem, it has a lot of good things. Okay, so first is accelerometers has referenceless. This is very opposite with optical. Okay, optical require very feature-like, okay, including video. You need to see where you're seeing. This is referenceless, mean you turn it on, you cover them all up. They don't see anything outside. They don't need to because they don't have eyes. They don't have camera, nothing. It's just by itself, just like your phone. Your phone is not a good example, but because your phone has camera. But the accelerometer is just that piece of sensor, small sensor. Okay, and of course it's not sensitive to occlusion. Okay, you control this thing in a dark room, it won't see. You can block things. It doesn't really matter. Having said that, it doesn't mean it's better. It just means it's not sensitive to those kind of situation. And another good thing is very small, easy to set up. Accelerometer has been around, navigation system in maritime, in many things, it's always here. IMU is actually not the term introduced inside AR, it's actually introduced in a big primary industry. Okay, so that's AMC, and also in aircraft controls, they all have this unit. Okay. And wireless, okay, so potentially wireless. Okay, so that means some of these devices could go into a small sensor like the V remote. Okay, that's wireless component, run out battery very quickly. Okay, update rate I told you, as mentioned earlier. The not so good about the IMU or the inertial device is what we call drift problem. This is directly the opposite side of the coin, the advantage you have. The advantage you have now is that you don't need a reference, not just because you don't need them, but we don't use a reference. Once you don't use the reference, you become referenceless. So what that means is that you could get lost very easy in the world. Typically it's called the problem called drift. Okay, so this is accumulative errors. So in this case here, because the algorithm is just simply sitting and reading that value of that sensor. and then interpret from that sensor where are you in space. And generally, it's accelerometer here, or what you actually read is extraction. Okay, we see the g per square second square. So what that means is it's not the location per se. You have to double integration process to get to the displacement. What that means is that whatever value is, you have no way of rectifying the value. Unlike the optical, you have a marker. If the marker there, then unless your algorithm is completely wrong, you're always going to be there. But for the for the type of inertial system, you might not be able to go back to the same location twice. Okay. In fact, what mostly happens is that you stay in the same location long enough. If your system actually has a lot of error, eventually the system will think itself is moving. That's what the term called drift. Drift means you're just sitting there. You thought you're not moving, but in fact, you thought you're moving, when in fact you're sitting still. Because sensors actually tell you that you're actually moving. And that's what's a term called drift. Okay. So that is come from the mathematical terms. Okay. So any signal that comes from sensor has error, but then you process them, you read the data, as I said before, acceleration, to get to, if you have one integration operation, you got what? Velocity. Another operation, you get displacement, which is x, y, z, what you have, right? X, y, z in a 3D coordinate system. So what that means that each side of it, integration, one double integration period. In the mathematics, in signal processing, that's a accumulated error. So you have error in the sensor, it will start to get inside the calculation. So that means if you're sitting here, sensor record supposed to report no movement, but the actually sensor reports some small error. There's some sensing that has a bit of noise. So what that means is it just it move a little bit, but then when the next frame come, next time you compute, it just build based on that position and build on further. So that become accumulative. So it go up, go up, go up, go up by itself. So that means it's, the end effect is that you're sitting there, you know you're not moving, but the sensor tells you that you're actually swiftly drifting out. So you'll be kind of moving out. In a situation, another situation that quite commonly known is if you're sitting here using only IMU to drive your head tracking, you sit in one location that starts at 0 degree, and you turn around. Yeah? Turn around 360 and come back at the same location. That's when you see the drift of your sensor, because the sensor might not come back at the 360. It might just slightly off, slightly behind. Yeah, so that's when I think this is a problem happen. Okay. So this is just give you the idea. So another one that actually no longer really that used in the common days, acoustic. So this is using the sound, okay, the wave that you can't hear. Okay? So some sensor detectors. So this is kind of old system that people used to have. Okay. So essentially here is based similar concept with optical. Okay. Optical see-through here is basically you see visible. Okay. Not invisible, the infrared. This one actually time of flight. Okay. So in this case, it's like a sound. Control the sound speed. You ping the sound. By the way, it is not here by human spectrum. So you hear the sound, you ping the sound there, and then you get the sound back. What you actually know is actually not where it's hitting, but how long it takes before it come back. Okay, so like you ping, you just wait, come back. Okay, this is come back, the same pulse. And what you have to measure, you measure what 20 seconds of back and forth. Okay, with that, you know the speed of sound. You can calculate how far the object is. Okay, I think that's the concept of time of flight. Okay. So that's generally really good. Okay. So the good thing about acoustics here is that it's relatively cheap. Okay. There's no sophisticated optics like laser and those kind of things that you need to do. Okay. It's just a simply ping sound. Okay. Small. The disadvantage here is sensitive to light of sight. Okay. So this is similar to optical. You block them, you can't see them. There's no reflection from them. Okay. So let's say you want to detect the object, but there's something in between you. Then the same with optical tracking, problem with light of sight. Okay. But another thing that makes this one very unpopular is environmental sensitivity. So because the assumption equation to solve here, not only you can get the time that you ping the pulse of the sound and the time that you detect the sound pulse back, you can detect that very accurately. However, you have no control over the speed of sound, which is affected greatly by the temperature of the room. So what that means is that if you go past the refrigerator, thing will go really slow. You come back, and this is no way you can calculate very accurately. So that is actually really a big limitation for a lot of this acoustic, okay, system. And another thing that actually is you cannot really solve. Speed of sound is not as fast as speed of light. Okay, in fact, it's far less. Okay, so what that means is that you have inherent low latency. Okay, so what that means is that it takes you a bit of second before it's come back and you calculate it. Okay, because the sound echo of the sound, for example, it takes human ear can hear. It actually is two different sound of peak. Yeah, so in the light you can't see the light reflecting. You think it's one beam, and in fact it's just reflecting off everywhere, but you just can't tell them. In sound, if this is echo sound, then you will hear them. In my voice, ping 1, ping 2, ping 3. So what that means is that it's actually introduced a lot of latency. Okay, latency and very. So that's generally is not very desirable for interactive device. Okay. And that's giving a low velocity, precision of these, creating a low accuracy of the tracking. Okay, if you think about it, the sensor of the sound, you only can actually tweak the velocity of the sound. Okay, so that gives you a lot of a headache in terms of trying to get a very accurate tracking system. Now, the next one here is has used normally, you remember the mechanical one in the 60s. This is a breakthrough in the 70s, electromagnetics, which is really not the dancing part, but it kind of it's kind of solved a lot of problems for the mechanical. At least now you can actually walk around without wire, without cable, without tether. So you can see here, it's just a little single. It just precursor before IMU gets small enough. Okay, you know IMU in the past is like weight kilo, so you probably don't want to tie that to your back of your head or something. So it's a very huge. It's not as small like what you have now in this tiny phone. Right? So therefore, electromagnetic at that point is actually really capable, a very, very ultimate choice for a lot of this tracking. So people used in motion tracking before, but now computer vision taking over most of this thing. Okay, you won't see this much anymore. The way this works is the same thing. It sends electromagnetic pulse inside environment, and there's a receiver which is either tied to you or one that you hold or something like that. It actually has magnetic coil that react to that magnetic field that send it through, and with that, it actually it depends on which direction. It has a orthogonal field coil as well. So this one generates different color based on the strength in which magnetic field come. So that means that if it comes straight, then this one is really going to be sensitive, and this is less. So you can tell that this is the direction in which it comes. Okay. So, but if it comes like this, then everyone got a piece of it, and that's when you need to calculate quite a bit. Okay. So this is where I think a lot of mathematics also have to happen to solve this problem. I think it's worked well in general sense, but it's still very relatively expensive. Okay. But there's a bigger problem there. Okay. Let's talk about positive first. Okay. So this one, the same with inertial. There's no sense of occlusion. This one is actually, you send it in, electromagnetic will go around it. Okay, we go to wall. Okay, so go to rocks, objects, everything. Not everything, but you kind of go through. Basic line of sight is no longer a limitation. Okay, relatively small. Okay, and definitely very high update rate. This is electromagnetics. You can pulse it very quickly. Okay, unlike sound. Sound you do need to have a delay. Okay. And then you also have a commercial available products. Okay. I think nowadays you still have it in some specialized area. Now, the disadvantage, the first one is very key. That's why most AR, VR people no longer use them. Okay. So they are sensitive. Unlike acoustic, they're sensitive to environmental change. This one is sensitive to magnetic interference. We're not talking about this. This is more or less if you have a metal object, metallic objects, like a key or something that make of metal. If you actually have a place that you calibrate with magnetic field, that you use the tracker, you have to do the calibration first. And you bring someone wearing, your colleague walk into the room, and in his pocket has metal objects in it. So what that means is he actually introducing a reflection point for those magnetic. So all the magnetic will keep bouncing in an unpredictable way. So what that means is that his calculation will completely off. Whatever he set before needs to be reset again. So in that case, particularly like military and those applications sometimes can be difficult. Simulation, you walk in, the gun is made of metal. So basically you generate this whole wave of magnetic distortion field, which is actually there's no way you correct for it. Yeah, so that's why I think eventually it didn't really very appeal to many applications. Wireless application is extremely, well, eventually it has, but it's not really that much of an option then. It's about technology. This is where a good example for technology push to a certain area and kind of go to dead end. Yeah, so kind of stop there. It's either expensive, not applicable, then the more cheaper, more affordable, and more robust take off. Okay. That's why most people are champion for a lot of computer vision based. This one is actually used for location based, okay, and also for location, for true orientation, for navigation. Okay, so this one also in your phone. Okay, quite existing there. So you can see here, it'll give you the direction where the north is, just like Google Maps. To think about that, and that's it. And this one is more location-based, GPS. You know how GPS works. You have one sensor in your phone, and basically you look for multiple GPS satellite, and you calculate your position is. Okay, so disadvantage is the sensitive to line of sight, a little bit of low latency. At this point, commercial grade, you probably easily get within a centimeter. Okay, it's very high. This one is probably a meter, probably not more. You can tell where you're walking into a, sorry. When you walk into the Google Map where they actually run you into a wall. So because the GPS sometimes can be, the grade of GPS accuracy can be very vast. Now, having a look at that, there's multiple of these things. Okay, I kept this in one slide here. So you can see mechanical, optical, there are different way of video computing. So that's what we use as air core, inertial, acoustic. So all of these has pros and cons. And you can kind of see them that actually there's no winning one. It's not one that actually, okay, I picked this one and I will actually have to look at another thing. Okay, so that's become kind of the born of the new technology, current tracking at the moment. Okay, which is if you go to the size of these, now we talk mostly on the sensing tracking. Okay, now we are actually be looking at what processing shall look like. Okay, so this is where you're actually going to be doing a lot of. Okay, so you can see it's basically the black one. So essentially there's a three frame reference between the three arrows here. This is a world coordinate system. This is the head coordinate system. This is object coordinate system. This is what you interact with. This is when you talk about, again, at the beginning of today's lecture about registration. Okay, all of these need to be known. How the world coordinate system align. This is a 0 point in the real world, and what the head location current coordinate system. If you use a separate tracking optical, that's a stay within the tracker domain. But the tracker domain or coordinate system not necessarily align with world coordinate system. So when they say people go to 0 point in the world coordinate system, it's probably different than 0 point coordinates origin of the tracker. Okay. So all of these require transformation of these locations. Okay. So I mean, if you know where you are in the site space, you have to be able to transform your coordinate system into another coordinate system. And you can see as the arrow, Y arrow go around. So all of these you need to know at all points. And that's what I would talk about AR Toolkit before. Okay. So that is when you actually click on objects, so you actually practically remove the head track world coordinate system altogether, because you just deal with the head coordinate system that you have a camera attached to and the object coordinate system. Okay, and you forget about the world. And that simplifies a lot. Okay, that would mean you open laptop, you put up webcam, and that's it, you can use. If you are worried about the world coordinate system, then you have to know where you open your laptop, where your cameras are located inside the world coordinate system, which is your real world, most likely. So that means these is actually become a difficult component. Okay. So now, with all of these, is actually there's a emerging solution which is actually what we call a hybrid solution. Okay, so this is, remember the table. Okay, so the table here suggests that there's no winning solution per se. Okay, one do them all at all circumstances. So that means this one is suggesting that why don't we have combined them. I might have alluded you to a few cases already. So you can see the image on the left by Office of Naval Research. This one suggests that, okay, you have GPS. This one will be like a university tour at Columbia University in New York. The same thing, you have a backpack pack. But this one really aims for also focus on the perception. Okay, perception, how to generate the tool. What happens if the command center somewhere else actually relay the information target that in front of you? Can you read that by the system you have, instead of you have to read it on some kind of a communication device? But this one, you'll be looked through it. For example, a floor plan of the building, right? So there's those kind of things. How would you see that? And that is a military one. Okay, this one is university one on the right. Okay, this one is a mixed hybrid with a camera and IMU in the orange box. Okay, there's a camera. There's a mini computer built into here. This is a handheld unit. Okay, this is built by a Cambridge researcher. So in this one, so you'll be looking with a small computer. We have a small monitor on it, the screen, that you can look around and then basically running AR at that time. Which nowadays, you can have this all inside AR Core, okay? So this is what, ultimately what AR Core is actually using, okay? I cannot tell you precisely what algorithm they use, okay? I know that it's actually probably derived from the defunct project called Project Tango. Okay, so which is a specialized device that actually supposed to do this tracking, markerless tracking. But now they cut the version and then we focus into what they now call AR Core, which is that what you have it in your tutorial. So in this case here, it's actually take the word PTAM that we have done before, similar concept, and merge with IMU. Okay, so you can see here, forget about GPS, accelerometer, gyroscope. Okay, so gyroscope is accelerometer, like calculate acceleration, but not acceleration. It's a rate, angular velocity, which is actually calculate the rotation velocity of the device. Okay, which is already sit inside most all the phone anyway. Okay, so you can see here. So this, and the camera is a main key, which is basically similar to PTAM that I showed you before. That's what it picks features from the environment. But instead of rely heavily on visual feature, it now has inertial device that actually come in and bridge between those. What happens, you don't see them. What happens is the camera move very quickly, and you no longer see the scene that you just thought you just saw. It's in the vision-only system will have to stop and then restart again, researching from zero. But in this one, you have accelerometer to pan it out. That actually you move with this acceleration. Estimation now is that you move from this part of the map to now this part of the map. Instead of, now we have no idea where we are. We need to search the whole map again. Let's say your whole map is this big, and you only see this part, but you move very quickly here. Accelerometer, vision-based only, you will lose everything. So all you have is the remain of this one. So computer vision needs to search for all of this. What are we closely matched to this one? With IMU, with move fast like this, you can use that accelerometer and gyro to estimate potentially you somewhere here. So therefore, instead of you search the whole frame, the whole world map, you just search this part inside the map that computer vision has. So that's a big difference. Mm-hmm. I think there was another video. This is what it add on top of it is the light estimation. So basically, that this video will show you is actually captured, try to make the model look realistic. So hopefully you get some idea what we have now. And the Apple is also have competitors equivalent version of this called ARKit.
When it comes to cryptocurrency trading, there's a place that gathers
Just give me a
Ethereum,
second.
Bitcoin, Ripple.
All right, so now you can get the sense that the hybrid that now is used to be in theory is now is actually flowing out. The HoloLens you will see tomorrow, that's a full hybrid system. So that's actually have more sensors than what ARCore has. You will experience quite a bit of a more, even more robust tracking. So the key idea here is a robust tracking. Okay, robust means you track, you barely, the harder you lose tracking, that's the more robust you get. Because oftentimes you will see all the tracking that we think is not perfect. If you show the best case, it always works. Okay, when it's not robust, mean if you stay out of its parameters, of operation parameters, then it actually fail. Robust here means it tries to stay within, it tries to keep itself in working operation. For example, ARCore, if you change the light, things try to stay in on it, but at one point it will lose all tracking. Okay, let's say you cover the screen, cover the camera, and that's it. And then before it will hang on there for about a few, maybe a 1 second or 2 seconds, but after that it got gone. Now, another key here is that because one of the things for tracking, if you're talking about robust, you also talk about throughput rate. Okay, right now ARCore, as much as advanced here, it relies heavily on the computer vision to run this. So right now ARCore at best is actually run as 30 frames per second. Okay, so that is actually some applications is not enough. Then what you actually be looking at is actually looking at systematic design. So this could be a VR system lab as well. Okay, similar things. You do the tracking on the left-hand side. Okay, and you calculate 6 degrees of freedom. So you have X, Y, Z position. You have roll, pitch, and yaw in orientation. You send that to a calculation viewpoint simulation. So in this case, it's a calculate viewpoint. Okay, your post estimation per se. Okay, you try to calculate that, and then you send to the graphics. So in this case, it could be mobile phone, it could be graphic card to calculate what is the virtual corresponding virtual scene should look like. Okay, and then you draw out the frames. So in this case, your graphic card will handle that. But all of these, each process introduced, this is a system just to make the number up so that you can get the sense. Okay, so the tracking is about 20 Hertz. Then between frames, you have at least already 50 millisecond latency. Okay, which is for human size is not much, but for machine size, this is huge. Okay. And for example, the calculation could be done very quickly, so you could have done every new calculation within 2 milliseconds. Right. How about these in rendering? You get 30 frames, so if you have a 30 Hertz of the display, like a camera, the screen that you have on the phone, then you practically have inherent latency of about 33 milliseconds. And draw the display, so if you have a display, a computer monitor, which is much higher rate, so that's a 60 Hertz, so that's a little bit have a latency there. So the total delay is actually quite significant. Okay, so with this, it's a simple exercise, you get over 100 milliseconds. What that means is that 100 milliseconds is about equivalent to about 10 Hertz. Okay, so that means that 10 Hertz is now 3 times 1/3 of the speed that you're running Vuforia on mobile phone at the moment. So even on your desktop. So this is a latency. What latency does is that once you sense it, but by the time you display the point, display location, is actually already 100 milliseconds late. You think about those, because now there's no sensor that actually senses it now, and the system can produce it now. That's a zero latency. There's no such system. Anything would have inherent latency inside the system. Right now, all the system that you're dealing with has, but it's high underneath the frame rate. Okay, what do you mean by high? Is that you can actually calculate and finish it before the next one comes. So I mean, the Oculus, if you really want to test it, although I'm not recommending, you just move very quickly. Okay, but you just have to make sure you're safe and you don't have the cord tied around your neck. It might not be good when you move very quickly. So you can try to move very quickly. You will notice some of those latency just pop up. Okay, but you got to really try. But as I said before, in VR, I'm not recommend doing that. Okay, because essentially you could get hurt. But in AR, it's very easy. You move your phone very quickly, what happens? Your cube, your AR cube disappear. Right? So those is actually generally what happens all the time. So that's just what latency would likely have an effect on you. But how would you, the next slide is really about in theory is how you actually going to compensate for this kind of latency. Any idea? The first step is you try to minimize all this, right? Each subcomponent to be small, take less time, more powerful, and those things come along, right? But it's still, at one point, it still have accuracy, accumulated system delay. But what do you think would be the ultimate approach to do this, to compensate for this? Your goal would try to minimize the latency as much as you can. Then you will go system like prediction. Okay, so this is some part of my PhD work. Okay, so I also have to deal with this system latency thing in my thesis. So that means the measurements is on the left. Okay, so but this is when the time is actually go from left to right. So the time never stops; it is moving along. But then your computation on the whole thing from previous slide. Okay, so you stop them up in the bottom here, computational. Computation take times. We know that sensor takes time, so it also go along with the timeline. But then, instead of you just calculate the position where you are from what sensor tell you, you actually add on a secondary algorithms, a second algorithm called prediction to predict where it might be based on where you are or where you've been, not where you are. Yes, so in that case, you predict, and then basically you predict such a way that actually the outcome came out at the time that you think your position predicted going to be. And that's what usually called predictor. Okay. So this, in theory, this is how you go. So generally, it's particularly handy when the system is running extremely fast. Okay. So predictions is actually based on not just last position, but it's also a set of previous set of positions. So like projection of the curve, projection of the things about to move, things like that. So it's not just one position and you predict to the next one. You predict the trajectory. Okay. So that's a multiple way of doing this. So what that means is that it's allow you to jump ahead a little bit by the time. By the time you show up, when the compute time allow you to come up, then that's when you actually input the predicted projection. Okay. The wrong things for this one is that if you predict wrong, then and the whole thing go off. Generally, if you have problem, if you actually have sudden change of movement, okay, it does happen when, especially in the military, when you think you're moving against, turn very quickly, okay? So what that means is that when your head is moving, like you track, and then suddenly you change, your prediction is that you always jump in front, but when your head tap, in that first frame, that's when you actually jump the other way. And that when if you're aiming target, that's a bad thing to happen because then the mark will actually fly the other way. Yes, so that is actually something that actually not necessarily going to work that well. Okay, so but with predictor now it's actually more accurate because it has a secondary polynomials built into it. So it's actually taken into account the acceleration, the velocity, and everything to predict really a head. But to predict how the head is moved is actually quite. It basically has more element of unpredictability. Unlike you throwing a ball, when you almost precisely can capture the trajectory of things going out, bouncing off, things like that really well. But the head movement itself is actually difficult because you actually has a degree of movement very quickly. Okay, so and changing direction all the time. But this will probably give you a flavor of tracking. Okay. When I say it's technical, it's really not mathematical technical, but it's really a technical driving of the whole system that we're dealing with here. As you probably by now know, so at least 20 of you here, that the tracking device is really just getting you and try to get where your head is moving, your hands are moving, things like that, in 6 degrees of freedom, okay, and create interactivity in this space, okay. Which without them, you might as well just looking at keyboard and mouse, okay. All right, so this is my last slide. Any questions? All right, good. Thank you. Hey, Matthew.
Assignment 3.